Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today on how to unlock hidden savings and delight with optimized shipping strategies. I'm Carol Keith Rafferty, the business development representative over at Friedman. And we've got two other people here with us, Charlie and Dane. Charlie, you can give your introduction.
Sure. My name is Charlie Hawkins. I've been in the TMS with some WMS experience as well, and the transportation industry in general for 28 years plus, actually. And I'm with, as I mentioned, Varsity Logistics. Full disclosure, Varsity Logistics has a TMS and a multi-carrier shipping software package that runs on the IBM and is very full featured. So we'll be talking about a few things. This is an educational session, so we're not going to be really selling or being specific. But having said that, I'll pass to Dane.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Dane Loader. It says VP of Global Product Strategy. Sometimes it ends up being VP of PowerPoint. I've been with Friedman now for, oh boy, almost 25 years. Worked with Charlie for a couple of decades now, and have been in ERP and supply chain for almost 35 years from both a software development and an implementation perspective. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, appreciate the introduction, guys. That's you have a quite colored history and a lot of knowledge kept up top in there. So we're excited to explore some of that. So as seen here, we have an agenda. This goes over some of the primary points that we'll be talking about today. So there are definitely a lot of pain points people face, and through that, we want to provide solutions to that. So what ways can businesses help unlock the solutions to those problems? We'll also discuss some things such as boosting the visibility of the whole process, of the whole shipping process, and how one can augment that to streamline their operations. We'll also discuss ways to drive profitability and help overall operating costs. And ways to delight your customers, that is one of the most critical ways of maintaining success in a business, is to have happy customers because they return. And we'll go through some final thoughts in a Q&A. So to help kick things off, we've got our first slide here of multi-carrier shipping challenges. So Charlie and Dane, I know you guys have been working in the industry for quite a number of years. So Dane, with some of your experiences first, having the 35 years that you had mentioned, what are some of the issues that you've had with shipping on the IBM? What are some things that you've noticed?
Well, certainly, I can amplify on all the points that have been made here. Disparate systems, we see it all the time. We see a lot of bespoke integrations to different carriers, different parcel shippers. Obviously, LTL is a big issue in our space in terms of rating it and interfacing with the carriers. And with all these disparate systems and islands of automation, fragmented workflows is certainly a recurring theme. A lot of manual decision making, a lot of insufficient information, and divergent processes, which are really the enemy of efficiency. And finally, the limited visibility. We all like data, and we all use data, and we all need data to help, understand where we've been, and really to plan out our roadmap to better efficiency. All these things we come across time and time again in our space, right, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. So, you touched on a few real important pieces there. So, your last one was limited visibility. So if you've got, another way to think of disparate systems, right, are separate systems from each carrier, maybe separate systems for LTL. Some of the challenges that customers seem to have with disparate systems is they're separate processes for each, right? So you've got a shipping guy that potentially is working with the free UPS system, so to speak. And then he has to go to FedEx, and it's a whole separate process. He's hitting different keys. The cursor's in a different spot to scan something or key it in. And it also limits them to adding carriers. So, one of the things we're going to key on in this presentation, obviously it's about ways to save money on shipping at the end of the day. And today there are a lot more options than there were in the past. Just picking UPS or FedEx, sure, maybe you want to favor it, maybe they're giving you certain discounts, but a lot of people aren't really checking into regional carriers. They're not really understanding what the post office can do for small and light packages. There can be a huge savings, and these really add up over time. So disparate systems is a big thing. Customers seem to find that having all the carriers and the ability to add others easily is a big thing. One more thing on disparate systems is, we don't find many IT folks that are excited about those, right? Because the carriers seem to update things without telling them. If you've got multiple locations in a remote location that's down, right, and you don't have IT people there, it's really it can be a real headache. And then from a visibility standpoint on these disparate systems, we sometimes call them islands of information. So that data is out there and you can't report against it. You can't understand, what you're marking up and marking down. But we try to focus on the challenges. So, Dane, I know in ERP, you're familiar with the UCC 128 labeling, customer compliance stuff, things that tie it to an EDI transaction. Do you see how some of those systems are broken when you're talking to the ERP customers?
Oh, every day. We end up with the carrier systems end up coming in as kind of intruder systems, and an interface is developed to a particular carrier. The feedback mechanisms go back into the ASN process. UCC 128 compliance is spotty, typically, and often bespoke on a customer by customer basis. Cartonization is someplace that a lot of people are weak on, and optimizing the cartonization is really difficult. And you've mentioned exports there. That's huge for us, is getting the export documentation correct, definable, repeatable. That's a very high overhead in a lot of our market verticals.
Sure. And what we found is that a lot of people kind of fell into an end of the line system over the years. They're shipping at the end of the line. And one of the takeaways from this slide is really identifying costs, right? So one cost is efficiency, right? So if you've got a backup at the shipping systems, maybe you want to print shipping labels, and UCC, if you're in that business, UCC 128 labels, and whatever compliant type documents, could be Costco, could be Amazon, could be anything, right? But you could do that at packing. So it's hard to do that for a UPS or a FedEx system, but a true multi-carrier TMS or multi-carrier shipping software package can give you labels at the right times. You can get them at packing, you could pick by label. And I'm kind of tipping my hat to some of the things we're going to get to on the other slide. So I think the takeaway for me is every customer is different. There are a lot of savings and challenges, including auditing that bill. There's all kinds of charges that come in on those carrier bills. And if you're not on top of that, a lot of customers are really surprised what goes on. So I think, we want to, other folks want to understand rate shopping, right? That's a problem. Rate quoting at a shopping cart, rate quoting in transportation. And by the way, this is not just a conversation about parcel. I mean, we're talking about parcel, LTL, full trailer load. There's tools out there for all of those. And in a perfect world, they're all in one system. But I think we touched on most of the challenges, Carrico. Maybe we start to get into some of the solutions.
Yeah, grant that. There's a lot of different pain points that you guys have mentioned here, and I think you've covered a lot of great stuff. Um, so given that, what are some of the ways that customers can help circumvent some of these issues that they're bound to encounter? Dane, could you give some thoughts on this one?
Well, if we look at things like, say, automating key tasks, ties into rate shopping. You think about somebody who's handling an order or handling a shipment. How do I choose what carrier is best? And certainly, oftentimes, our customer makes a choice. Oh, I want it shipped via FedEx. Maybe that's not the right choice. We'd like to have some rate shopping tools that can look at it and say, what's the best way to get this shipment to our customer within our service level agreement that saves us money? That ties into things like throughput enhancements because the system is doing the work of doing the rate shopping and is giving us the plan as we're part of order processing. All right. Generating the export documentation. I mean, this is something I've been grappling with just recently. We have customers that have whole departments that do export documentation, and the order will go wandering through there for a couple of days as people figure out what's required. I find that if we can get a solution in for that, we can cut a lot of fat out of the order processing overhead, if you will. And ultimately, I mean, having it integrated into the ERP just reduces that handling overhead. I don't have to walk it to another department and wait for it to be done.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think a key point I want to make here is the exceptions kill you. There should be, if you're doing these ASNs and doing things on a separate line, sometimes it makes sense, oftentimes it doesn't. But all these things can be automated. Export docs can be printed automatically. Sometimes they're going to different departments because the data wasn't there. So, I think the theme really is integration, and that's going to allow you to do a lot more. So, some of these systems that are out there, whether they're low cost, multi-carrier shipping systems or carrier systems, they're really not connected, in my opinion, properly to the ERP or the WMS. I mean, in many cases, one should be bringing in carton level detail, right? You should know which items are in those boxes, or at least in the order. And that's going to give a shipping system the information to print the proper hazmat documents, to go out and look at harmonized codes, to go out and get country of origin for those items and automate those things. Another thing that I think's important is in terms of like the slides about technology. So, I mean, dimensioning, right? So how are folks capturing dimensions when we're in parcel, right? So we would hope that someone would, if they're doing a lot of shipments, they would consider a dimensioning piece of hardware. There's various vendors out there for that. It automatically goes ahead and looks at, scans, so to speak, the size of that shipment. And for those of you that don't know, I mean, the carriers re-scan and reprocess and dimensionize every single shipment that's going through their hub. So, other technology pieces are print and apply, right? So, when you get to the point, or if you're we've got all different types of customers on this call. I was looking at the list, so we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about automation through conveyoring, that an overhead scanner taking a look at the box, putting the label on, pulling the weight, and doing those things and increasing efficiency that way. Dane?
Yeah, particularly when we get into the, I mean, you have print and apply listed there. And I mean, that's something that is in big demand in a lot of our customers is I need point of use printing. and really, directed packaging. Tell me what to put into this carton and then give me the carrier compliant label for it, or the UCC 128 label for it, right at point of use. I'm not printing out a batch of labels in advance. I'm doing it as the box is coming past me. And Charlie, are there also facilities for helping me optimize my package counts and whatnot? Can I, have tools that help me put orders together so I ship one big box instead of two small ones?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple types of optimization, and what you're mentioning is like a containerization. The word can be used interchangeably with in the industry, but containerization, package optimization. There's a technology now where you can look again that integration to the master item file. We can decide how many boxes it should be and make sure that you're trying to get the package count so that you're below any oversize, because there's a very large upcharge, and that charge keeps getting larger every year for oversize. So yeah, we can, as I keep saying, software can make the decision about how many boxes there should be for an order, and in fact even tell the warehouse workers which pieces of corrugated they should pick and which items should go in each. And one more comment on that, for those of you that have struggled with exact rate calculation in the shopping cart, that technology solves that, because you can see what's being ordered, and there's a sub-second call saying they ordered 4 of these and 7 of those. Okay, that's all going to go in one box, or actually that's going to be 2 separate boxes. And then the math can be done properly and presented to the customer with all their options, including time in transit for those 2 boxes that they're shipping.
Excellent points. Yeah, it really seems like with automation and of course what comes with it, integration, are extremely critical to successful shipping operations themselves.
I just wanted to just make 1 or 2 more points. So business rules, that's really important. The system, a system should be understanding what the particular customer, your customer needs. So do they want you to automatically bill their account number? Or do they, under some circumstances, want you to prepay an ad, right? Does it require a special packing list? Does it need an Amazon type label or a Costco type label? So that should happen automatically. That should not be what we call tribal knowledge, where someone's having to remember to do all that. And then for the manufacturers on the call here, I mean, rather than have a human looking at lots of LTL volume and deciding if it should be a multi-stop full trailer move, that is a perfect example of that's a perfect job for software. So a TMS system or a multi-carrier shipping software system should be able to look upstream, see all this LTL volume, look at the time in transit or the customer expectation or the customer promise, and actually plot a full trailer that's going to stop here, here, and here that's efficient. And there is an enormous savings. I mean, it's customers have said it's roughly half the price of LTL if you do that efficiently. Now there's a caveat. You've got to have a lot of LTL volume, right? But I just wanted to mention that is a really good example of automation saving money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic points on that. It's yeah, as saying, it's helps the overall outlook of the business for multiple reasons. Implementing these business rules, like you're saying, can really improve things and help customer expectations. Oops. Yeah, and that's one of our topics of this slide here. So could you, Charlie, do you think you could talk to some of these points more, discussing visibility and customer expectations around that?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. So, the 1Z tracking numbers, of course, have been around for feels like 20 or 30 years possibly. But so Parcel's always been good at tracking. I do think that it's important to let your customers know, what those tracking numbers are sooner than later. I know as a consumer, if I don't get some kind of email or text that my order is, been received and whatnot, I tend to think that there's actually a problem or that I did something wrong. I find, or we're finding, that mentality is, you know, reaching out or kind of becoming the norm for businesses as well. So, a lot of ERPs will do it. Some of the ERPs on older releases won't do it, but in our opinion, an email saying your order shipped, here's the 2 FedEx tracking numbers. One went UPS, and by the way, USF read away. We shipped a pallet, and that's coming. Here's the pro number and the tracking number. Now, LTL, in switching gears, LTL in general, those are probably the most recent advancements. LTL companies, more and more and more of them, every year are getting more advanced with their APIs. APIs, an application program interface, and it's just a quick call out to a server at the LTL carrier. So that is now there. Customers should be armed, in our opinion, users, with that data, with that API capability and tracking capability. Dane?
Yeah, I can amplify on the LTL scenario. I mean, the LTL guys are catching up in terms of the way you interact with them, and they're starting to behave more like parcel carriers, right? In terms of the level of integration that you can get into their systems to track the pallet or your palletized cargo at the same level that you track a package through UPS or through FedEx. They're starting to really catch up because, I mean, everybody's under pressure to offer a differentiation. And the other thing we've been finding is we've talked a lot about LTL, and Charlie, you touched on making the leap to full truckload scheduling, and that's something that a lot of our customers have trouble with, right, making that leap because they don't have the data, they don't have the analytics, and they don't really have a good methodology and platform for making that LTL FTL decision, right? Because it's complicated, and you need an assist for that, right? And that really falls into that decision making with quality data, right?
Sure.
And so, and once again, it all boils down to improved customer experience. If I can do palletized cargo and expose that to my customers the same way I would expose a FedEx package or USPS or UPS shipment, that's actually pretty cool, right? Because it enables me to do self-service for that customer. They can check it 20 times a day if they want. They don't have to pick up the phone and say, "Where's my order?" Right?
Sure. And customer expectations, it's kind of a broad topic, but obviously, think about your own expectations. You'd like to get the shipment as soon as possible, right? So we've got all different types of customers, so to speak, on this meeting. Some companies take 4 or 5 days to process the order. You know what I mean? And that would be unacceptable to most people. I mean, if it's going to take that long, and there might be reasons for that, it could be bottlenecks, it could be inventory issues, but I think it's all about communicating with the business customer or the consumer. And then also you've got, if your competitor ships dramatically faster, I think that could be a problem. So that brings us back to throughput and efficiency, and systems that aren't backlogged. The pickers aren't backlogged, and they can zero out out of stocks and communicate that with the customer. So the expectations are increasing, I think, for business to business and certainly business to consumer.
Excellent points on these. Yeah, it's having happy customers will inevitably even lead to a happy business too. So it's beneficial for everyone. Um, so yeah, given all that you guys have mentioned so far, we're seeing that there are tons of different expenses that get picked up or dropped off along the way. And one thing that everyone is on a path to do is reduce those expenses. So I think that's something that we could really talk to on our next slide here. Yeah, so to kick this one off, Charlie, what are some of your thoughts on how to identify these hidden costs and reduce costs as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by saying, the cost of shipping or freight costs in general is a huge, can have a huge effect on profit and loss, right? And this is not necessarily an area that consultants and whatnot over the years have really focused on. The cost of shipping, I wish I had a chart on how much it's gone up over the last 15 years, but I have seen charts like that, and it's kind of staggering. So having said that, there are a lot of ways, in our opinion, to do a better job. There are a lot of very large, well-run companies on this webinar. I looked at the list. So but there are also smaller ones. So bear with us here as we work through some of the more obvious ones. I think chargebacks is a big area. It's a big thing, and it now has the attention of a lot of CFOs and whatnot. On the other hand, there are businesses that aren't doing a great job even understanding there are chargebacks. They're just paying the invoices, right? The invoice comes in from a parcel carrier weekly. LTL is a little bit different, but you've got to really, in our opinion, compare what your manifest system or TMS system said the rate was going to be with what that bill is going to be. And even if you're paying the freight, okay, you really need to be able to do your margin analysis. You really have to know what that true freight cost was, right? Not what you're were expecting it to be. Switching gears a little bit back to the workflows. I mean, you want to get things through as quickly as possible and without errors. Okay, so you want a system that, I think the default these days is pretty close to a scan and get the label. Okay, that's if you're doing it manually, not a whole bunch of steps and systems, and there should be a real-time integration to the actual order, not a second database that's down in a shipping software system separately somewhere. There should also be processes that don't involve people keying things back in to the ERP or the WMS. It should be automated. There should be I'll call it a toggle, if you will, but an update of a status code typically to invoiceable or ship confirm, a lot of people call that. So, and then this next one I'm going to mention is kind of painful for some people, and they may not want to hear it, but boy, how many what are your freight policies? Okay, when does your customer pay freight, if ever? Are there things that the company's inherited for a certain division or a certain set of customers where you pay the freight? Do you know exactly what all those costs are? I would ask people to look at their freight policies and make sure that your system is able to calculate those various policies internally. We talked about rate shopping. In fact, why don't I let you get a word in, Dane, and then I'm going to come back to some of these that are near and dear to my heart under strategies.
Yeah, all these points are valid. Everything on this slide focuses on reducing my direct shipping expense and being more efficient on the floor. But there's also IT overheads involved in maintaining a lot of disparate links to different carrier systems. Every single one of those links that may be bespoke or maybe an island of automation is something that requires additional care and feeding in the systems department, right? That integration has to be maintained separately. It needs to be upgraded separately. It needs to be monitored separately. All that imposes overheads on the operations staff. And that's just another expense that probably isn't really being attributed back to product sales. It's just going into SG&A, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to significantly simplify your systems landscape when you can put in an integrated solution that can fan out to multiple carriers, right? All of a sudden you have one integration to worry about, not five, right? Then you've guess what? You've just simplified your life. I like simple life. I'd rather have one than five.
Sure.
So
Yeah, that's great. So, I think, rate shopping means different things to different people. Keep in mind, time in transit is much more available now for both LTL and parcel. So it's not always just the price, it's how long it's going to take to get there. So rate shopping can also be thought of rate quoting. What would be great is a system that allows, if you want to do some modeling in transportation, or if you have people that are making decisions about LTL versus parcel and things, the rate shopping functionality, we believe, should be available to everyone. Okay, order entry should be able to see it. If they're, and again, all these businesses are different, but there are a lot of businesses that would like their order entry people to be able to tell Mr. Customer on the phone or be in an email, here's what it's going to cost, here's when it's going to get there if you go that way. A lot of you probably see in a shopping cart, if you want to pay more to save a day, is it 2 days or 3 days when the customer pays? So I'm going to bring something up that I think we're off non-disclosure on this now, but there are serious indications that parcel carriers are going to start experimenting with dynamic pricing. So what's dynamic pricing? Dynamic pricing is like booking a hotel in Vegas. Okay, if you book it during an SAP convention, okay, you're in bad luck. Same thing with air, right? So what does that really mean? How does that apply to parcel? Well, I think common sense tells us that around the holidays, okay, around those peak periods, they're gonna apply pricing based, and it's just experimental, but it's been discussed and it will be experimented with by them in the very near future. What do you do now, right? So what is that real price? So I think rate shopping becomes much more important, and a system other than the carrier system is probably a good idea right at that point. And so on rate shopping, just to go through a few other things. So now the parcel carriers, switching gears, the parcel carriers are trying to take as much business from the LTL carriers as they can, right? So they've got programs that's, I'll give it my own name, Slow Boat, okay, which is kind of like LTL, but it's still with UPS or FedEx. So you want to be able to compare LTL shipments. What are your minimums on an LTL shipment versus what are you at your max 100 weight or ground super economy, et cetera. So, I could keep talking about rate shopping, rate quoting for a while. I did already mention consolidation of orders in general, consolidation for shipments, and the advanced consolidation of LTL to a multi-stop full trailer move or shipment, okay? We talked about integrated dimensioning equipment, okay, which would pick up on oversizes, or at the very least, you should have a system that you can scan a certain box that you see, box number, corrugated number 18. Here are the dimensions of that. That passes into the TMS or the shipping system, and it actually puts the right dimensions on the box. Okay, so that's a strategy there. Zone skipping is really for very large shippers. However, I'll mention that there are programs called zone skipping where you are basically doing a line haul with a whole bunch of different full of parcel shipments, okay? And you're dropping them into an induction point with the post office or UPS or FedEx, and the label that the TMS system has generated is basically a zone 2 label, right? So it's a short haul. So someone's hauling them to LA, they're dropping them in, those are going to, you know, Southern California. So that's for high volume folks, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. You know, I've spent a lot of time, I think, talking about carrier bill auditing. I think that's a huge area. I mean, that's oftentimes, and it depends on your volume. I mean, if you're shipping 100 boxes a day, you know, is it really worth setting a whole system up, you know, to do it? Probably not. And it all depends on, and you know, I've got to say, a lot of people, you know, you'll talk to the department, oh yeah, we audit every single bill. Well, how do they do that? Right? I mean, I'd really like a good, thorough explanation from someone as to how they do that manually, because it's extremely difficult. If there's ever a job for a computer, it's comparing the bill that came in against the manifest that you created. And I will tell you, there is a lot, it's quite a training opportunity for folks, because when they see how many things that they've shot themselves in the foot with by not giving the right dimensions, not getting a valid address, et cetera, they're always surprised. And maybe you can talk a little bit about carrier negotiations, Dane. I'm kind of hogging the slide here, but you know, as you know, you mentioned there's a lot of data that can be exported or is actually in the shipping software package, which is tied seamlessly. In our case, we're on the IBM I. The ERPs we integrate to best anyway are on the IBM I, so they can leverage that data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we have good detailed data about our shipments over the last year, we can go to a selection of carriers and say, hey, you know, I'm hitting these volumetric targets. What are you going to do for me, right? I mean, it's a free market. I have a choice of suppliers, and so you can use this historical shipment data to not only kind of, well, shall I say, put the squeeze on you know, your existing carrier partnerships, but also to make an informed decision and enter into informed discussions with alternative shipping services. For example, you may find that based on the nature of your parcel shipments and the way that you're distributed across MSAs, that maybe zone skipping is a possibility, and you want to investigate that. I'm fascinated by you know, Charlie, your revelation that you know, some of the parcel carriers are going to become more like Uber, right? The price goes up when the bar lets out, right? when it's busy. I mean, that's a really interesting development, and that's just going to underscore the need for, you know, very responsive rate shopping and real-time access across those carrier systems to say, oh, you want to ship this afternoon or you want to ship next Tuesday, here's the best rate we can lock in across a selection of carriers.
Yeah,
Sure.
excellent insights. Love all that. It's yeah, really interesting about future surge pricing. That's who knows how that's going to turn out. And yeah, really amazing strategies here. So through all this, just trying to be cognizant of time, it seems that there's a pretty clear link between shipment visibility, taking on cost reduction strategies, and having happier customers. Charlie, given some of the passion that you spoke with on this last slide, I'm wondering if you'd be able to kind of continue on some of that and give some of your thoughts on how shippers can attain better customer experience.
Yeah, so I kind of stole some of my own thunder on the earlier slides on these topics, but there's definitely a link. I mean, and just at risk of restating it, I mean, you know, how long does it take to get your order? You know, does it is it kind of delivered by a carrier that's good in your area. I mean, I receive things that, really should have been an LTL shipment, you know what I mean? And because a lot of people, customer shippers have come to the conclusion that when something, when you've got 370-pound packages, it really probably should have gone LTL. I don't know what would, you follow me? So there are decisions like that the consumer can create costs, right? So, I mean, returns are a huge problem for people. If the shipment's getting damaged, that's a bad customer experience, and it's even a bigger profitability issue, right, for the customer that shipped it. So that's important. I talked about speed, right? So, I mean, the sooner they can get something, the better, and the communication. Again, an email is becoming more commonplace with tracking numbers attached to it. And then, maybe even follow-up emails where it's, saying that, we've encountered an exception, the carrier's informed us, we've encountered an exception, and, here's the latest. I mean, that seems to go a long way. There are also, some things that help, like, pre-printing return labels and putting them in the box. So a good multi-carrier system is going to allow that to happen as well.
Excellent. Yeah. It's yeah, a lot of good points. Dane, do you have any supplemental thoughts or ways that you could amplify this?
Well, I mean, everything on this slide really ties into overall CSAT. Clearly, if we make the correct choice of carrier and we expose that information to the customer, we can set customer expectations very early. All right, in terms of we acknowledged your order and we've already determined it's going to go out on this carrier on this day. There are other things in sort of ERP land that influence that in terms of establishing a promise date and doing available to promise and all those things. So all of these strategies work hand in hand with schedule attainment and information communication, because even if you get into commercial customers, I mean, Charlie's coming at it from very much an e-commerce, but even commercial customers like to be notified that, we shipped your order and here's the pro number, right? The truck will be there Tuesday between 2 and 4, right? And, by the way, you already told us you needed to go to dock 7, so we're going to be there.
You're right, Dane. I mean, and that information wasn't there, in many cases 5 years ago, even, you know what I mean, or 4 years ago. And some of these carriers, it wasn't there 12 months ago, where there is an actual fast way to get a tracking information, disposition, pro number, et cetera, into an email or into the system. And one thing I missed on this is, shipping should not be an island of information. I mean, if you're using a freight broker, I'll call that, or a consolidator, some folks will call it a 3PL, but, let me see how I say this nicely. We've heard the word smoke and mirrors sometimes, right? I mean, we're going to use all of our volume to consolidate and do all that. And that may be true, but integrating that into your present system is a whole nother story, right? I mean, it's extremely difficult. If you can find a system on the eye that can do all that stuff automatically, and my point is push that data to the right people, right? So customer service should have at their fingertips, a drill down, so to speak, into the transportation management system. Yeah, that ship, we went USF Red away to that location, and we went, UPS freight to the other, and then there were some parcel, and let me click here, and do you have a Bob Smith there? Well, he signed for that, you know what I mean? And so maybe you want to check that out. Or accounts receivable, people stop paying their bill, or they don't pay their bill until they feel like they have proof that it was delivered. You can give them that proof. So the data at the fingertips of anyone in the organization is a real nice to have when it comes to transportation and shipping.
One other thing I want to point out, Charlie, you mentioned kind of the freight broker. I noticed that there are a lot of people offering freight brokerage services. They only take you part of the way. It's been my experience. They will help you choose a carrier. They might even put the rate quote out there, get the 214s back. They don't help you on the execution side.
Right. Or the integration. And there's been, it seems a bit of a trend that there's a little bit of over promising there as to how they're going to go platform, deep into a Frontier or a VAI or whatever. They just don't have the knowledge to do that. And then when you ask the ERP, they don't really have the knowledge of the freight broker's captive system. So a lot of times that people go a little bit backward when they have two separate systems like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah, lots of really great points with this, guys. It's we've really covered quite a lot today. I think it's about time for us to move to our final slide here. We've covered things from what customer expectations are, how to act upon those expectations, ways to help save money, and common issues that people face, as well as neat ways to actually come around and resolve that. So it's kind of hard to have a final thought or takeaway, but I think it's worthwhile to give it our best swing. So Charlie, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like people to take away with them from what they've learned today?
Yeah, I think that if I cover some of those points a third time, that there's going to be a revolt. So I think that I'll go real big picture here and just remind everyone that the freight costs are becoming a much larger issue on pressure on gross, and of course net margins. So it's kind of the final frontier. I think that, a lot of these consultants have driven cost out of other parts of your businesses. It's time to give some thought to shipping, what you're really paying, what those costs really are, and how can you reduce them. Every customer's got different pain points, but with any luck, you left with 1, 2, or 3 from this presentation that you can investigate more thoroughly.
Excellent, appreciate that. Dane, do you have any final takeaways?
Well, one of the, if we go back to the title of this presentation, it's really very IBMI centric, which means we're really talking about a mid-market of manufacturers. And my experience has been there are some integrated shipping solutions that come down from the high end of the market, which are really too much. They're too big for our mid-market, which is why our mid-market has tended to kind of limp along with the carrier provided workstation, right? Oh, I can get it for free. And they just live with that. So it's really important to find an integration and an integrated solution that fits nicely into the typical IBMI mid-market, which is like 200 million to, or even 50 million to $1 billion, right? In that small to medium enterprise, if you will. We can quibble about the numbers, but really we're talking about integration at the mid-market here.
Yeah, really. Yeah, seconded. Fantastic. All right. Well, now that we've gone through most of this, I'd like to give attendees one more reminder. If you would like to submit any questions for our Q&A section we're about to go through, you can add those here through the question bubble, and you can access handouts to get more information as well. So let's dive right into some of these. We've got a couple live event questions. So let's see. For this first one, we have, will the process of automating key tasks and throughput enhancements be easier, you're saying, when we adopt Manhattan WMS?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes. I kind of would need to know more, on that. I mean, so yes, I mean, a thorough TMS would automate the tasks that we've talked about on this call. So there's a a deep integration there to more than just what I call header level detail on a shipment. So when we get to the data in Manhattan, we can automate a bunch of the processes. Hazmat, export docs. We could do. You can get shipping or carton contents labels when you would like them. So we would need to see what version of Manhattan you're on. What your pain points are today, and then we could give you a more formal answer.
Excellent, cool, appreciate that. So we have a couple others as well. One being, to reduce traveling, can we use efficient picking through minimal travel batch?
Yeah, I think that kind of edges into the concept of like wave picking and zone picking, if I understand the question correctly. I mean, obviously, if you've got people on the shop floor out in the warehouse faced with a 200 item pick list, you want that organized in such a way that they can make one pass through the warehouse as opposed to going back and forth and back and forth. That kind of edges into kind of the WMS land, right? Certainly there are cartonizing solutions that are part of an overall TMS that can go into that area, but that's really more of a WMS function, right?
Yep. In the interest of time, I'd love to just jump in on that, Dane. So you're absolutely right. That's, I've worked in the WMS industry. That's clearly a WMS feature. However, the overlap really is that a good system can give you a label when you want it. Now, we need to have enough data, right, to get that label. But we have customers that actually pick by label, and maybe they can do it for everything. Or a good example, when you've got a massive backlog of shipments for a back order item, we print the labels out, okay, and they go out and find the box, put it on it, and it goes to a separate conveyor or onto a pallet. The forklift brings it out. So there is some overlap. So pick to label, pick to box that's already got the label on it, as well as maybe not shipping at the packing station. But those are three things that aren't common, that a deeply integrated system on the eye should be able to do.
Excellent tips, appreciate that. We have one more here. So based on frequency of products, can we place them in a more easily accessible location to reduce time and travel?
Mm-hmm. Once again, I think that kind of gets back into classic ERP and WMS in terms of, warehouse layout. You want your fast movers, your A products, as opposed to your B, C's, or D's, to be in easily accessible racks or bins or whatever warehouse layout you're using. That doesn't, necessarily tie directly to WMS, but there can be a handshake there so that the WMS can tell the TMS who's giving you guided picking to say, hey, by the way, you're trying to fill this box, go here, as opposed to running around the warehouse trying to find it. So once again, it comes to that integration aspect of warehousing integrating with transportation management and shipping.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, really appreciate that. It seems to be that we are right at the top of the hour, so fantastic timing with these with the slides and with the Q&A. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar here today. If you'd like to reach out to anyone here, you can contact Charlie over at sales@varsitynet.com, or if you'd like to help reach out to me, I can be contacted at sales@friedmancorp.com. So any questions for either of us, we'll be happy to answer them. And with that, yeah, Charlie, Dane, appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
All right, bye.